tonight we are at our first step in which we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. As we begin the 12 steps, as we said, they are the outline of the big book Alcoholics Anonymous, a step-by-step plan to recover. As the first 100 people recover from this illness, they laid down a step-by-step plan for those who came behind. And I thank God for the first 100 people, because they left a path for us to walk. And this path was clearly marked by 12 steps, and as we guide us through the big book Alcoholics Anonymous. And as we go through these steps, before we begin, recovery from alcoholism is just like recovery from any other problem. The procedure is simple. And it was made simple for a lot of confused, mixed up people. It was just a path that was laid out. In order to recover from a problem, there is but one way to recover from a problem. The first step in recovery from a problem is to find out what is the problem. And that's very important, that part of the procedure. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, because that's the foundation of recovery. What is the problem? That is the first step. And once we find that information is really the foundation, because it affects everything else that we're going to talk about. And this is why the first step is so important. Our first step is a problem statement. The problem is that we're powerless over alcohol and our lives have become unmanageable. Now, once we have the problem, and then it's from the problem, from the first step, that all the other information is gathered. Because once we see the problem, it's from the problem that we determine the solution. Which is the second step. Now we're going to understand the problem really is powerless. And if the problem is powerless, then the solution would be power. So the first step shows us what is the problem, which is powerless, and the second step is going to talk about the solution being power. Then the last 10 steps of recovery is simply a plan to find that power. Steps 3 through 12 will show us how to find that power which will solve the problem. But we can see how important the first step is, because if we don't have the first step, if we don't understand the problem correctly, the solution will be wrong, and the planned program of action will be wrong. So the foundation of the whole thing is, what is the problem? And this is the first step. Alcohol has been a problem since the beginning of time. It's the oldest known drug used by mankind in the world, and alcohol is a drug. And in the beginning, certain people, we always wonder, there's a lot of stories on how this all began. I remember one, I guess as good as any other, about how this caveman was in his cave one day mashing he had some grapes. And he was storing his grapes in the back of the cave, and he just loved grapes. And while he was doing that, a big fat hog run by his door, and he said, boy, I'd like to have some barbecue in place of these grapes. So he just run off, and he dropped what he was doing and started chasing this hog. And with the tools and the weapons he had of his day, time he caught up with the hog and did the killing job and dressed him and got him back. It was a few days. When he got back to his cave, his grapes had gotten sour and spoiled, and he was so hungry, he just went over and got a big handful of the juice and put it up to his mouth, and something magic happened to him. Bang, He probably said, I ain't going to waste no more of them damn grapes. I found something here. And as people begin to have problems with alcohol in the beginning of time, it was the non-alcoholic people, some of the people who could drink, and some of them who didn't drink at all. It was the non-alcoholic people who tried to find out what was wrong with the alcoholic. See? The attitudes and the images of alcoholism were created by the non-alcoholic. It was the non-alcoholics who said, well, what is the problem? They said, well, maybe he's weak. Maybe he's sinful. It's a moral issue. They were trying to find out what was the problem with the drinker. The drinker was probably drinking. He didn't care what the problem was. But over the years, there was a non-alcoholic people who developed the attitudes and the images of the alcoholic. You know, he's a bum. And all that was created by the non-alcoholic people. Down through history, no one understood this problem, but everyone tried solutions. And did they try solutions? They tried everything on the alcoholic. There was nothing that had been invented that hadn't been tried on the alcoholic. But no one understood this. In the beginning of time, we can go all the way back to the book of books, and this was the earliest description of alcoholism was Solomon. I love this in Proverbs. It's one of my favorite things. He says, you know, beware of the wine that moveth right in his cup. Its prettiness red, but it lies, its bite like a serpent, and its sting is like an adder. He says, you know, he goes on to, in the beginning, he talks about who has redness of eyes. You know what I mean? He describes alcoholism and how it affects each individual. You know what I mean? And he said, you will be with one who lieth down in the midst of a sea. You know, you sway around a lot. Or sleepeth at the top of a mast. You know how the mast of the ship just tosses. And he said, you will say they have beaten me and I felt it not. You know, some next morning you feel like somebody was beating on you the night before and you're trying to recall what happened. You know, you got them bruises all over you. Them drunk bruises. And then he says, you know, he sure knew some of us fellas because he said, thine eyes shall behold strange women. And this was Solomon thousands of years ago. It seemed like they were just like us. And thy heart will utter perverse things. You'll say a lot of things you don't want to say. But then he said, but still yet, they will rise in the morning and they will seek it yet again. And they'll get up and still. He didn't understand. None of the great minds understood alcoholism. And we didn't understand the problem. And before that, before this time, when we didn't understand the problem of alcoholism, then we were victims of the problem. If you don't understand the problem, there's no way you can find a solution. There's no way you can treat it. Today, you know, we're the same way with cancer. You know, we don't have a solution for cancer, and we don't have a treatment for cancer because we don't understand it. What is the problem? Once the researchers are trying to find out what is the problem of cancer, the solution probably already exists, and then we'll know what to do. Before 1935, we didn't understand alcoholism. And this wasn't the first time. You know, this information came to the world many years ago. Just recently, I was just enthused with looking how God has worked in this world, in the lives of alcoholics. I think it was early in 1787, there was a psychiatrist, a doctor in this country who said alcoholism was a disease. He was the first person to say that. He really couldn't describe it too well, but this went unheeded. Didn't anybody pay attention to him? Later on in 1812, the temperance movements began in this country because alcohol was a problem in this country. Alcohol has always been a problem in America since the beginning of time. They say when the Mayflower came over, when it landed, most of the cargo was booze. It's been a problem, and people were dying. And they went to do something about get people to cut down on their drinking and temper their drinking. They didn't understand the problem, but they began some effort. And it's amazing the success they had. As we look back on it, these temperance movements had about 1/3 of the population signed a pledge not to drink. 1/3 of the population of this country at that time. But it failed. Later on, you know, the Washingtonian movement began, and the Washingtonians were, as this movement, it was a bunch of people sitting around a tavern one night, alcoholics probably. And there was a temperance movement the temperance movement was having a meeting down the street. And this was in Chase's Tavern in Baltimore, Maryland in 1840. And there were 6 alcoholics sitting around the table. And they went to this meeting, and they went down there in jest, to make fun of the people or to see what they were doing. And something happened to them. They were very struck by something that was said there. And they came back, and the next night they met there, and they decided to form a society of non-drinkers. And they did. And they started a movement. In a year they had 1,000 members. And they spread and spread and spread. 6, 8, 10 years, they are credited with having 700,000 members. They were more successful in a short period of time than the AA movement. They had spiritual concepts, and the gist of their meetings were they would have people come up and talk about their drinking. And this is where it began. And they would tell their stories. And they had spiritual concepts. But they didn't have any traditions. They didn't have any guidelines to their program. They got mixed up with other things. And the main reason they failed, they didn't have a planned program of recovery. They didn't have a program. And then in 1935, God saw fit that man, this thing take place again. And it went to began in the mind of Dr. Silkworth. And Dr. Silkworth at the town's hospital, he had went there to take a job because he couldn't find another one. He wanted a job, and he took a job at the town's hospital for $40 a week. Dr. Silkworth didn't plan to do all this. He didn't plan to work with, no doctor plans to work with alcoholics. By the way, they don't really like to work with alcoholics. In fact, they say alcoholics don't do what you tell them, which is true. Some of the medical people say it's a self-inflicted illness, which it's not. And then he says, drunks don't pay their bills no way, which is true. It ain't a lot of point working with a doctor working with people like that. But Dr. Silkworth, was on the farm. He was there at the town. Remember, he went there in 1930. Until 1933, during his early years, every day he was on the job, working with people. And the people he worked with came back and forth, back and forth. No one understood the problem. He couldn't do anything about the problem because he didn't understand it. And he saw people continue to come back, and he saw people die. He saw no one recover. I could see the frustrations this man went through. And although most of his colleagues said it was a sin, it was a weakness anyway, he began to discern something within these people. He said, I believe, I see some driving force within these people that is driving these people to this destruction. And he said, I can discern something within these people. And he was able to take this thing, and he was able to split this force into 2 things, part of it in the mind and part of it in the body. And he came up with the concept, and he said this was just his opinion, and he shared it with Bill when Bill came to the town's hospital in 1933. So really, this was the beginning of Alcoholics Anonymous at the town's hospital. When Dr. Silkworth discovered what is the problem. And I think we're very blessed as alcoholics tonight. The only alcoholics in the United States, or in the world rather, the only alcoholics in the world are in Alcoholics Anonymous. The rest of those people out there are not alcoholics. They don't know they're alcoholics, but they don't know they're alcoholics. And alcoholism is a very strange illness. It's a unique illness. It's the only illness. It's very hard to make this diagnosis. And the first step is what is the problem is a diagnosis. And this is the first step in recovery, is to make a diagnosis. And it's hard to make this diagnosis because alcoholism is the only illness that tells the victim he ain't got it. You can tell an alcoholic because the one that swears he ain't got it's got it. One of these social drinkers say, you say, you might be an alcoholic. He'll probably say, I might be. He ain't got it. It's the one that ain't got it's got it. And the only way you can get well from anything is find out you got it, right? You do the same thing with a cold. You go around, and the moment you catch a cold, you don't realize it, but you have caught in a cold. You go sneezing a little bit, and you say, oh, that's something in my throat. That's lying. You know what I mean? Then your nose gets stopped up. You say, got something in my nose. My eyes get running, I got something in my eyes, And so you deny long, and finally, you keep on saying, hell, I'm catching the cold. That's the moment you can start taking some medicine. See what I mean? See, we do that we do that. And so the first step is, what is the problem? And I, as an alcoholic, in my experience with alcoholism, I did not know I was an alcoholic. I didn't even know what an alcoholic was, but I knew I wasn't one. That's smart, isn't it? I'm not an alcoholic. Now, so the first step, and Dr. Silkworth told Bill, he said, first thing, he said, this is a disease. And I think the first thing, he said, Bill, he said, you're not sick, you're not sorry, you're not weak. He said, you have an illness. You have a disease. Words won't change our lives. Ideas is what changes our lives. And there's one bad thing about ideas. In order to convey them, you have to put them into words to transfer them from one mind to the other. And sometimes, the idea gets mixed up in the word. The person gets the word, but he don't get the idea. So we have to be very careful that we get the idea. And disease is a self-explanatory word. It's real simple. 9 out of 10 people who drink alcohol are at ease. We see them every day. Golly, I don't know much about it, but whatever they're doing, they're at ease with it. They take 1 or 2 drinks and walk around and shake on it. Might not take another one. Leave it and say, come back, give me that first one. That one got warm. Now, they're at ease with alcohol. No problem whatsoever. And one person over here, and that's me, he is dis. Now, dis means back from, away from. If 9 people drink alcohol at ease and one of them is away from ease, then there is a condition that separates these people. Something causes this separation. And the disease is alcoholism. Alcoholism is a condition that separates people from the normal patterns of health. This person is healthy, and this person is ill. And what causes this is alcoholism. Once we have a disease, we have to find out, in order to recover from it, we have to know the exact nature of the disease. And in my case, I never could, I had a hard time, because many years I didn't know what my problem was, and finally I come to the conclusion it was drinking. You know what I mean? After about 14 years of drinking, I said, I don't believe you can drink. It was the only thing I worked at and got worse. Usually practice makes perfect, but practice in this thing got worse. And after about 13 or 14 years, I said, I don't believe you can drink. So then I decided to quit. I found out I was just as bad at quitting as I was at drinking, So he says that this disease is a twofold illness. He says we have a physical allergy to alcohol and a mental obsession of the mind and a physical allergy. These two things coupled together make us powerless over alcohol. For many, many years, the medical people tried to treat the alcoholic. They sent a lot of drunks to the medical doctors many years ago, and they said those doctors killed a lot of drunks, beating them on the knees with little rubber hammers. And they said, well, I don't know, I can't see no problem here. He was just looking at one way. See me? He saw nothing medically wrong. And then they sent him to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist asked him a lot of dumb questions. He gave him a lot of dumb answers. And he could not see, he looked at it just as a mental problem. But Dr. Silkworth was able to step back and look at and see the picture. He said, I believe it is half and half. He says, I believe, and he begins to talk about the physical allergy to alcohol. You know, and he uses that word, and there's another word that transmits ideas. What is an allergy? You know, I had a lot of, you know, I could understand the word, but I really didn't convey, you know, how was I allergic to alcohol? No, I didn't even know what it was. You know, we say an allergy is an abnormal reaction to a food or chemical substance. We have an abnormal reaction to alcohol. Now, it's pretty hard. You know, if you're an alcoholic, and you have been for quite a few years, or 3 or 4 years, it don't take long. You get kind of used to that. No. If you've been an alcoholic for quite a few years, or if you've been an alcoholic since you first started drinking, it is very difficult for you to understand that you're an abnormal drinker. See, we abnormal drinkers have been drinking abnormally for so long, and we've been drinking with some other abnormal drinkers, so abnormal is normal to us. How do you know you're abnormal? Or how much you drink? Oh, about like everybody else. Boy, I'm sure glad I'm sure glad everybody else didn't drink like me. But so we have to really, to understand how you're an abnormal drinker, you have to first understand what is a normal drinker. I never looked at that. You know, they say normal so-called social drinkers, or whatever we want to call those people. So they take a drink of alcohol, and alcohol is a toxic drug. It actually can be poison to the system if you put enough into the system. So it's a poison. Now our bodies, we are marvelous mechanisms, mentally and physically. We're God's greatest creation. There's nothing on the earth like this human body that we all have, the mind and the body that we have. Now, once anything goes into the system, our body has a unique way of immediately diagnosing what it is we put in. And then it reacts chemically and produces certain enzymes or chemistries to handle whatever. If we put in a piece of steak, it says steak, right? And if we put in some sweet potatoes, it says sweet potatoes. You know, you can't fool the body. You can't put in sweet potatoes there. You'll know it's sweet potatoes. Whatever we put in, our body knows exactly what it is, and it signals certain organs in the body uniquely to act to whatever it was we put in it. And the average, when the social drinker, he puts alcohol into his system, it's a poison. His body recognizes it as a toxic poison. And he has certain chemistries, and he has a certain reaction to it. First thing they say to a normal social drinker, it makes him dizzy. One drink. He gets kind of dizzy. And that's a normal reaction to a drug like alcohol. And it says that it makes him so nauseous. A couple of drinks in his system, he gets kind of nauseous at the stomach. And after a while, he gets a sense of being out of control. Now, that's a normal reaction to alcohol. That's what happens when a normal social drinker takes a drink. Now, that didn't happen to me. When I took a drink, I didn't get dizzy. And I didn't get nauseous. If I did, I put another one down there on top of it real quick, and it stayed. You know. And I didn't get a sense of being out of control. I got a sense of being in control. But the main thing that separates me, and immediately I wanted another drink. And so that is an abnormal reaction to alcohol. Dr. Silkworth said the craving of alcohol is a manifestation of the allergy and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Normal people do not crave alcohol. You know, I never figured that out about those social drinkers. Every time they drink, they get all they want. And I drank for 16 years, and I never remember one time saying, I got enough that night. I never did get enough. So my reaction is different than other people. And we look at this, you know, he talks about the allergy to alcohol. He said there are many different types of alcoholics. You know, he talks about in the book, the 5 types of alcohol, the psychopaths, and we won this. And all these people, if we all took a drink, we always try to compare ourselves with other people. Oh, am I alcoholic? Well, you hear somebody, well, he got 3 DWIs. I didn't get but 2. I don't believe I'm alcoholic. Come here. She's been married 6 times. You know, she's an alcoholic. I ain't been. I just made 4, so I'm not an alcoholic. And we go around comparing. This is not the way we do this. We study the doctor's opinion. The doctor's opinion says there are many different types of people. You know, if we all took a drink tonight, God forbid that we do in this place, you know. Boy, I just couldn't imagine that. But if everybody took a drink tonight here, well, you know, it would be a lot of no 2 people would react the same. No 2 of us would do the same thing. You know? One of us would immediately be up on top of there dancing and raising hell. You know what I mean? Just having a good time. One would be sitting over here crying in his beer. Ooh, hoo, hoo, world ain't treating me right. 2 of us would start a fight back in their corner. And 2 over here would be putting the make on each other. You know what I mean? No 2 of us would act out in behavior-wise and do the same thing. But all of us as alcoholics, we would not have but one thing that we would all do. Just one thing that we have in common. All of us would immediately want another drink. See? That's the one thing we have. We would all crave another drink, although we would act different. So, you know, we are abnormal drinkers. And the doctor says the only thing that we suggest is entire abstinence. And this is all the doctor knew about at that time. And, you know, he didn't know anything about the breakdown of alcohol and the enzymes because they hadn't really talked about that. But nowadays, you know, as we learn, we're learning more and more about the disease of alcoholism, and the things that we're learning are actually bringing out the doctor's opinion in 1935. You know, what is the normal reaction to alcohol? And he says that we'll take the 9 people who drink normally, and once they take a drink of alcohol, they put it into their system, and the body produces certain enzymes or chemicals to metabolize alcohol. When alcohol comes into the system, alcohol is a toxic substance. In other words, it can destroy the body. So the body has certain protective enzymes to attack the alcohol in the normal drinker. And he breaks it down to acetaldehydes, down to diacetic acid, down to the acetone level, which is broken up into simple carbohydrates. Then this is broken into three products: water, sugar, and carbon dioxide. The water is passed off by the body. The carbon dioxide is given off through the lungs, and the sugar is burned up or stored as simple energy by the body. This is a normal way to metabolize alcohol. It takes it takes the normal person about an hour to metabolize an ounce of alcohol. If he drinks in any fashion, that will build up, and he'll get nauseous and dizzy. And if most cases, he'll go pass out or vomit or do something. You know what I mean? But there's really no problem with these people. Now let's look at this guy over here that's this. Boy, was I this. Now we put a drink of alcohol into our system. Our body recognizes it. For some reason yet unknown, our body does not produce enough of these enzymes. As we compare these two, we don't produce these in a sufficient quantity or quality like the normal drinker. Just like some people are diabetic. They don't produce enough for insulin to break down sugar. The alcoholic doesn't produce enough of defensive chemistries against alcohol. So he breaks the alcohol down to the acetaldehydes, down to the diacetic acid. He gets it down to the acetone level, as far as he can go with it at that time. Later on, you know, as he will metabolize it out, but it stops at this point. And this is the real villain, because when this chemistry is made up, which is a byproduct of the alcohol, it gets with certain chemistries in the brain cavities, naturally to the brain cavity, and it produces a physical craving for alcohol. You know, once we take a drink, it gets into this chemistry, And immediately we crave the next drink. Now I think, he said this does not occur in the average temperate drinker. So he says the craving of alcohol is a manifestation of the allergy. It's an abnormal reaction to alcohol. And he says that these people will never be able to safely use alcohol in any form. We can't safely use alcohol. Now, the craving is what gets us. We alcoholics. And I can now that I understand the problem, I can see why, I can look back and see how I was a victim of this thing. And many, many times in my life, I wonder, how did it do? Now I know how it happened. See, I'd get off from work and I'd say, my wife said, I want you to come home and cut the grass. Oh, man, the hell with the grass. You know how we feel, got to cut the damn grass. Well, okay, she's raised so much hell, so I got to really do it this time. But everybody knows you can cut the grass better with one drink. So we stop in the bar, and we have one little innocent drink. Drinks that we see other people sitting in there, these normal social drinkers, they in there having one. What's wrong with me having a drink? So I go in there and have one drink, and I got a visit with my buddy on the bar, so the phenomenal craving can develop, While I'm visiting there, this phenomenal craving begins to grow from one drink, and the craving starts, see, it equals one drink. One drink, 1 unit of craving. But that one drink produces a craving of one drink, and the craving says, why don't you have 2? Ain't nothing wrong with 2, and then go cut the grass. But that second drink doubled the craving. Because the craving is doubled now, it intensifies, because if the craving comes from alcohol, when I put more alcohol in, the craving is going to build up. So the craving is stronger. And then my mind says, well, don't forget about that grass. And when I say, oh, well, 3 won't make any difference, then we'll go. So we take 3. By this time you say, man, I really got to cut that grass. And the third drink produces, the craving is tripled. And by that time, you take the 4th drink. And your partner says, what did you say about that grass? You said, to hell with the grass. The more we drink, the more alcohol we put into our system, the craving gets stronger with each drink. So really we crave more after the 4th or 5th drink than we did after the very first drink. And the craving becomes beyond our control. We go through the well-known spree. We drink and drink and drink. And we have never, as an alcoholic, I remember my experience as an alcoholic. I never remember satisfying that phenomena. I have never had enough to drink. I had too much. But I never experienced one time when I said, I got enough that time. I didn't. I never got enough. Now, so, and this will always happen. As an alcoholic, we know that this will always get worse. The chemical deficiency will never get any better. The older we get, even though we don't drink, the chemical deficiency gets worse. If you got a deficiency in your system, it will get worse with age, whether you drink or not. Like I say, I haven't had a drink in over 24 years. But if I would take a drink tonight, the craving would be worse, because the chemical deficiency is worse. Because I'm older and I produce less of the chemistries that metabolize alcohol than I did 24 years ago. And since there's no known way to treat this, but the doctor is simple. He said, it's simple. If you're allergic to alcohol and every time you take a drink you crave it, he said, don't take the first drink. And you will never experience the craving of alcohol. That's simple. So he said, these people can never drink safely. So because of this side, I can't drink safely. And there would be. But now that I understand that part of my problem. Dr. Silkworth says, later on, our book says, rather, we should understand this. Every alcoholic should completely understand his illness. After all, if you got to live with this, you need to understand what it is. But he says the main problem of the alcoholic sin is in his mind rather than his body. And although we need to know this, the main problem is in our mind. The main problem is, what makes me take the first drink? Why then do I take the first drink? He explains it, over here, and to illustrate it, everybody has a very complex emotional life. We're going to be doing all our work in here. This is what we're going to recover from. We all have feelings. They're God-given things, and we're not going to get rid of them. They're supposed to be in life. We have loneliness, we have fear, we have resentment, we have all there's anxieties. These are part of our human makeup. All people have problems with these. Now, we're not the only people on earth that have problems with their emotions. No one is free from this. They might look, like a great friend of ours, he always said, we always go around comparing my insides with your outsides. He looks good outside, but they got them too. Now, they are the root of all human problems, and we see all sort of behavior problems in people as a result of these misdirected instincts. But we alcoholics, somewhere in the development of the alcoholic in his past life, he has these little emotional buildups. Dr. Silkworth describes this as we're restless, irritable, and discontent. I had these all my life. All it was natural to me. I didn't know I was sick. I was just naturally sick, I was always like this, Never really, I had some comfortable moments, but never really satisfied with me. Comparing myself with other people. Didn't fit in. These things just went with me constantly. And it was a problem. Other people, some people commit suicide. Some people have nervous breakdowns. You don't ever see an alcoholic he breaks down drunk. He knows. He finds another release for this. Somewhere along the line, while having one of these emotional buildups, while having one of these problems, he has the opportunity to drink, or it's a drinking occasion. And he noticed, while having a few drinks, that these few drinks depress his emotional level. And when I took a few drinks, he associated these two things together. I can go out and talk to people. It depressed my fears. I don't feel inadequate anymore. I'm a good dancer. Golly, boy, I can dance now. I can talk to people. These few drinks become a solution. Now we have the combination, the problem and the solution. We've lived with this little old problem, and now, I don't have to do that no more. I have an answer to it. And we add these two things together. Put the big plus in there. So we add certain moods with the chemicals. And we come in our heads with addiction. Addiction means to add together certain moods with the chemical. And we find our answer. We said it's the only problem in which the answer becomes the problem. The answer becomes the problem. And he says we build up to this point again. We become restless, irritable, and discontent. We build up to this point again. And it triggers this line. And this line is obsession. An obsession is an idea that overcomes all other ideas. That's a powerful thing. This idea will overcome many, many other ideas. You know, it was my wife's idea that I shouldn't drink. My boss's idea that I shouldn't drink. The police suggested it a couple of times, you know. And a couple of judges, you know, very influential people. I mean, the doctor, you know, he knew medicine. And even at certain times, I myself said, you can't drink. No more for the rest of your life. But at a certain given moment, when I became restless, nervous, and discontent, within me, the idea to drink came up. And this idea to drink overcame my own idea, the doctor's idea, the judge's idea, and the police's idea. It was so strong it overcame mine and everybody else's idea, and I took a drink. So when we build up there, we have no defense over this once this obsession is triggered. And the obsession, the idea to drink, and then we said all action is born in thought. And when you take a drink, it's preceded by the thought to drink. It has to be triggered in the mind, and all action is triggered in the mind. And we reach over and we take a few drinks, and that's the trigger mechanism of the whole illness. And this is where we're going to do all the work. Now, once we put the alcohol in the system, then quite naturally it goes over and sets off the physical craving. The mind triggers the body, and the craving is the acetones are manufactured. The craving is started, and craving makes the first drink, and the second drink, and the third drink, and the fourth drink. We play that off game. We go through the well-known spree, and down here at the bottom, when we come up for air, we repeat our alcoholic national anthem. I will never do that again. We all say that, and we really mean it. Some people don't believe we mean it, but we mean it. But if you were sick as we were, we really mean it. And we slowly start another build-up, you know. We're still restless. We're still irritable. We're still discontent. We're still lonely. We still feel like we don't fit in. So we'll say, boy, after I got in trouble, I'll never do that again. But we go along for a few days, and it gets worse. And finally, we build up, and our mind says, take a drink. And we take a drink to feel better. We reach over here to take the few drinks. The few drinks do depress this. It does the job, son. It still makes us feel better, but it sets this thing off again. If we feel better when we take the drink, yeah. But it sets off this circus in our life again. We go through the well-known spree, and the doctor said this is repeated over and over again, this vicious cycle. And it kind of gets smaller each time as the years go by. The trap gets smaller and smaller. The mind is triggering the body, because the more the mind makes you take the first drink, the chemical deficiency gets worse over the years. The craving gets harder, and as the craving gets harder, the drinking gets harder. As the drinking gets harder, then more emotional problems we got to take a drink to get over what we did over here. It's really, you know, it's like a tennis ball. It's like a tennis ball in a tennis match. Boom, 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 boom. And there's the alcoholic in the middle, you know. When he settles down, somebody knocks him back over on the other side. And he says, I'm going to quit. So if we can't drink because of the body and can't quit because of the mind, and as long as we're playing this game, we can't quit taking the first drink. And if we can't drink because of the body and can't quit because of the mind, then the conclusion is simple. We are powerless over alcohol. If you can't drink and you can't quit, you're powerless. This is the first step. The first step in recovery is to see the trap we're in. This is it. You know, it's been said many, many years ago, the solution is simple once we understand the problem. Once we understand the problem. And this was, you know, for many years I didn't understand this in my life. And thank God for Dr. Silkworth. He gave it to Bill, and Bill gave it to the first 100 to give it to other people. They put it in front of the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, and today 1.5 million people, alcoholics, have been able to understand their problem. This is the foundation of their recovery. Now, for many, many years, I couldn't understand. I see why I failed. I tried to control my drinking while drinking. I don't know if any of y'all did that. You know, I was going to say just 3 and just 2 and just 4, and, you know, I tried to count them, and I never was successful at that because of craving. I realized today the craving got me. I didn't know what I was doing. You know, I mean, just like a lot of people, you know, trying to treat themselves. And so for about, you know, a number of years, I said, well, after of doing this constantly, I finally come to the conclusion after about 12, 13 years, I said, I don't believe you can drink. After all this trouble, you know, I said, you know, 1,000 people said it. Finally, I said, you know, I don't believe you can drink. Every alcoholics have been there. So I said, well, just quit. Oh, yeah, that's obvious. If that's the problem. If drinking is all it is, just quit. Okay. So I quit, and just quit. Didn't do anything about my life. See, I didn't understand this part. Ain't got nothing wrong with me. Just quit drinking. So I was still restless and irritable and discontent. These things, these pressures were built up on me, and I went for 9 months without taking that first drink. And I did did all the routines, you know, eat sweet, stay busy, and don't go to them places, and just be bored like hell, you know. Everybody around you nervous, you nervous, and the rest of them tipping, you know, around you and everything. And boy, it was tough. But I just quit. And I would build up, and the obsession to drink would come at me constantly. But when the alcoholic decides to do this, he gets his #1 weapon out. And when he means business, he messes around for a while, but finally he says, I'm through. And he means it. So he gets his #1 weapon out. He gets old Will. And he gets Will out, he means business. So I put old Will up there, and I blocked him off for 9 months. And finally one morning my mind said, oh, it's all right. Willpower went out the window. And that little devil got through it. I took the drink, and I was gone again. So, once Dr. Silkworth give us this, what is the problem? There's another great physician, psychiatrist Dr. Carl Jung, said, I believe that the solution is in a vital spiritual experience. I believe this can produce personality changes sufficient to recover. He said, I believe this is the solution to alcoholism. I believe if people could make some personality changes and adjustments, if they could live below that line, then they could live below that line. Then they would never have the obsession to drink. If they never have the obsession to drink, they would never take the first few drinks. And if they never took the first few drinks, they would never set off the craving of the body. This, we believe, is a solution to alcoholism. Some personality changes. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. You know, where we can make sane decisions about alcohol. So next week we'll go into the second step, the solution, and how to, and identifies that solution just as it lays out. Now that is diagnosed the problem, then next week is going to write the prescription of what is the solution to the problem.